So I just got my HSP kit in. Here's the Y bridge. This is a nice thick piece of aluminum. Looks very well made. It also comes with the seal you need, hose clamps, got the studs to put in the Y bridge, and then 2 nuts to bolt the pipe together, and then a plug for this. But this thing, I'm not too pleased with how it looks right now. It looks like somebody kind of half-assed took a sanding disc to it, but it's nothing I can't fix. Also, the welds, looks like they didn't even bother grinding them down very well, but I'll fix all that later. I got the hose and So I contacted HSP and told them I was unhappy with what I was sent, and they sent me a powder coated one for free. So can't complain. Very good company. Got a 2-inch PPE up pipe. Got some ARP bolts for the up pipe. Got some up pipe gaskets. Got both Y bridge seals. First thing I'm gonna do is take my right front wheel off, and then I'm gonna start taking the fender liner out. And now I've taken the wheel off, and I'm gonna be removing the clips that hold the fender liner in. I have removed the fender liner. I'm going to be using this trick shot to soak the up pipe bolts while I'm taking everything else apart. Leave the cap on when I drain the coolant, because if you don't, it'll go everywhere, but it's just this cap right here, and you pull that out and it'll start draining. First, we're going to take the negative battery terminals off. We'll be removing the intake. I will be removing the resonator. Next, I'm going to be taking these 3 bolts off that hold on this shroud that goes over the turbo. I'm going to take the top V-band clamp off the downpipe. Now I'm going to take the V-band off the bottom of the downpipe and take this bolt out here. So the easiest way I found to get this downpipe out is to take the shroud bolts out and then loosen the transmission dipstick tube bolts, these 2 right here, and then pop it out of the transmission and then push it against the back side of the cab, and then the shroud will slide up through the top of the engine bay, and then the downpipe slid right out the bottom. So here's the up pipe and the shroud that came off it. This is where those bolts are located. So now I'm going to be working on taking the up pipe off. This is the bottom side, and I'm going to work on getting these 3 bolts out. I'm going to be using this propane torch to heat up the bolts, and then spray a little bit more of this trick shot on them. So I just got the bottom up pipe bolts loose. I'm going to leave them in while I do the top, but I just heated them up and gave them a quick little snap, and they broke loose. So I got the 3 up pipe bolts out of the top. I didn't bother heating it up, but you really just kind of have to feel for it up there. To get the top up pipe bolts out was this ratchet with an extension and a 12.12 millimeter. And then I use this broken pogo stick as a breaker bar. I just pulled the last 2 nuts off the EGR cooler where it connects to the up pipe. So now I should just be able to pull the up pipe out. So now I have the up pipe out. You're going to want to pull the up pipe through the top side of the engine bay, because it doesn't want to come out the bottom because of the Y that's in it. Now we're going to be removing the belt, and then we're going to take the AC compressor off. You're going to remove these 4 bolts, and then you're going to remove these 2 clips here, and then you're going to fold it over on top of the battery. So now I'm going to take the alternator off. It's just these 2 bolts down here, and then this clip, and then you pry it up. So there's a wire connected to it on the back. Next, I'll be removing the turbo mouthpiece. It's just this clamp right here. So I'm gonna have to take this off so I can move this wire back so I can pull the turbo mouthpiece out. Now the turbo mouthpiece is off. So I'm gonna be taking the stock intake piece off. Yeah, that's not cool. Next thing I'm gonna do is remove this line and this line here to the EGR cooler. Removing this bolt here and that bolt there to remove the EGR, and I'll take off that clip here. There's also going to be these two bolts on the back side of the EGR cooler. And now I have pulled out the EGR cooler and the EGR valve. Right now I'm working on getting the Y bridge mouthpiece out. I found if I put a screwdriver right in here and pry a little bit and wiggle, it seems to be popping out. So that came out pretty easy. I'm gonna go ahead and remove this coolant pipe that goes to the thermostat. I got the coolant pipe off. You just have to take this hose off back here. You have to take this hose off, and you have to take all these wiring harnesses apart, and then take the bracket off just to get to this back bolt on the pipe. And then there's a bolt that holds it into the thermostat. There's the Y bridge. It's a mess down there. I'm gonna try taking that bolt off of those fuel lines, and there's one back here. Looks like a little bracket that holds them in place. That might give me enough wiggle room to get this thing out of here. Now I've gotten all 8 Y bridge bolts out. I just used this gun with a 10mm and a long extension and this bendy extension, and they came right out. So I finally got this thing out. It was not very easy at all, I can say. So to get the Y bridge out, there's a coolant line that runs through here, you can see, and you're gonna wanna take this bolt out, and then you're gonna follow it back here and take this bolt out, and that'll give you enough wiggle room with that. And then right off this bolt, there's a bracket for the fuel lines, and you're gonna take that bolt out. And then there's a bracket here for the fuel lines, and take that one out. And then back here, right up here, there's one more, and then that'll give you enough play to pull the fuel lines back and pry this away, and then you'll be able to pull the Y bridge right out. Before I start putting everything back together, I'm going to clean all this up and wipe some things down. So now I've cleaned everything up. I've got the surfaces where the Y bridge is going to sit scuffed with red Scotch-Brite. And then I cleaned up everything over here best I could, but if you have a truck with low miles and it has an EGR, I would highly suggest removing it sooner than later, because when it starts leaking, it makes a mess. So now I'm ready to put the new seals in the HSP Y bridge, and then I'm gonna try and fit it down in there. So now I have the new seals installed. So I'm gonna go ahead and install these studs in the Y bridge. I've installed the studs. I just used a pair of vice grips on that little threadless part of the stud, and that seemed to do the trick. So I got the HSP Y bridge in. I had to take this coolant line off, but so I could pry this up this way just enough to get this to pass through. But it is definitely a challenge, but just be patient with it. You can see where all the bolts go. Those are going to be fun. So now I've gotten all the Y bridge bolts in. When you get it in there, it doesn't sit quite all the way down in, so you have to tighten all the bottom ones first, so it kind of pulls the top down in, and then you can line the top bolt holes up and put those bolts in. I'm going to be putting this line back on, the bolt to that line back on, and all of the fuel line brackets back together. So now I've put all the fuel line brackets back on, and I've bolted the coolant line down. To be able to fit the new Y bridge neck in, you're going to have to bend up on this fuel line here. And then head and put a little bit of thread tape on the plug that goes in the pipe. Put a little bit of oil on the O-ring that goes on here. I got the O-ring installed, and I'm going to put it on the truck now. Now I'm going to be putting this piece on. I'm going to have to probably use a 10mm wrench to turn these. but I'll probably have to take that clip off there to get to that one. This one, I just took the fuel line bracket off again, and I was able to get to it right through here. This side, you have to take this wiring harness clip off, and then you can get to it right here. Now I'm going to be rerouting the coolant that would usually go through the EGR cooler. I took the little hose that came off the end of this off, and I'm going to be taking this hose here off. These are both the hoses you're going to be removing. I had to cut about this much off the heater hose they provide. So I got the coolant reroute in. It's just one hose clamp up there, and then it comes down through here, and then there's another hose clamp, and then you bolt it back in here. This is where the EGR was sitting. I just put this bolt in and didn't tighten it all the way down because it would probably bend this line funny. So now I'm going to be putting the boot on that connects the Y bridge to the intercooler pipe. Now I've installed the rubber boot. So here's the new up pipe we got. We're going to put the new up pipe bolts in it and put this ARP assembly lubricant on. So I installed the up pipe bolts on the top side, from the top side of the engine bay. Now I'm going to be torquing them down from the bottom side. So now I'm going to go ahead and start putting the downpipe back in. I slid the downpipe back up in there, and then I put the top V-band on first, and then right now I just finished putting on the bottom one, and then I'm going to slide the shroud back down through the top of the engine bay, and then bolt that back together, and then put the transmission dipstick back in. Now I've got the shroud on the downpipe, and I've tightened up the transmission dipstick bolts. So now I'm going to be putting on the coolant pipe that goes to the thermostat housing. So the coolant pipe's back on, and now I'm going to be putting the wiring harness bracket back on and connecting everything, and putting this wiring back. Now I'm going to be putting back on the turbo mouthpiece. So I'm going to be putting the shroud back on top of the turbo. Now I'm going to be putting the alternator back on. Now I'm going to be taking the AC compressor and putting it back in its spot. AC compressor is back on, and I'm going to put the belt back on. Putting the intake back on, and then the resonator. So finally we're going to be putting the air filter back on. We're going to connect the batteries back up, and we're going to fill it with coolant. The coolant plug back in. Now we've filled it with coolant, and we're going to start the truck. Put the fender liner and the wheel back on. So I zip tied this wiring harness down to the new Y bridge pipe, and I took the EGR connector and just taped it up, and then zip tied it here so I know where it is and know what's going on with it. So I just took my truck for a test drive. The check engine light did come on, but I was being a little rough on it just to see how it was running with the new Y bridge in. So after the check engine light came on, I pulled it over and cycled the keys a couple times, and then I started back up and it went away, and it hasn't came on since, and I've been driving it around for a couple days, and I'm just going to keep an eye on it and see if it comes back on. So if my check engine light does end up coming back on, I'll probably just take it to my local diesel performance shop and get them to tune it so it's not throwing any codes anymore. I would say this job on a scale of 1 to 10 was probably about a 8.5 on how hard it was to do. You're definitely going to make sure you want to have the right tools and at least a day or two to fully complete this. And I would say minimum 2 days if you're doing it by yourself. I would definitely recommend doing it with another person though.